selling with love is a powerful way for people to choose to sell, as opposed to the douchey, manipulative, scammy marketers and salespeople that do exist in the marketplace. But one of my biggest personal motivators is because I don't want to see this in the marketplace. Instead, I want to be able to see a world where we can trust each other a little more, because everyone has learned the right ways of communicating, selling in a way with integrity. And that's a world I want to see tomorrow.
I'm Amy Woodall, and this is Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network, teaching you how to incorporate love and consciousness at work, home, and the world at large. You just heard from Jason Marc Campbell, author, speaker, and fellow podcaster, and he has a very ambitious goal to flip the script on sales. Now, whether you are a leader, a salesperson, or you have a totally different role, we're all selling every single day in our communication. And what if we could take that series of transactions, or what often feels like it's transactional, and make it a process that's full of love, understanding, trust, and value for everyone involved? Listen in as Jason and I discuss what he calls the 5 steps of love, his roadmap for bringing a little more beauty into sales, and how we approach communicating with everyone around us. Okay, Conscious Habit listeners, if you had to write a list of your favorite podcast, besides this one, obviously, what would make the list? I have a handful that come to mind for me, and Jason Marc Campbell's podcast, Selling with Love, is definitely on that list. And we snagged him for the Conscious Habit podcast. He's such a sucker. He is with us here today, and I cannot wait to pick his brain. Y'all, I've been with Sandler and selling for the last 10 years. And this concept of doing it with great love, compassion, and consciousness is just near and dear to my heart. So Jason, welcome to the Conscious Habit podcast.
Amy, it's a pleasure to be here. Love the Sandler community as well. And I sometimes belittle myself and I say, I'm not teaching anything new. I'm just reminding people of things that already feel natural and giving them permission to do it fully. So I'm hoping that's going to be a good thing by the end of this episode for everyone here.
You know what I hear in that? And I feel this for myself too, because I don't think I have a natural or original thought in my head. You certainly do. But I think I'm a messenger, right? There's times where we can just share something in a way where it resonates with someone the way they needed to hear it in that moment. And it's a beautiful gift that you get to bring both through your podcast, through your book, and through the work that you do. So our listeners are a lot of salespeople for sure listen to this. A lot of executives listen to this. And I always joke that I put the woo in Woodall. Little did my husband know when he married me that that was going to be what I would bring to the table. But the idea of love, people often say for like romantic comedies, or it's something I got to hold and people have to earn the right for me to love them. But you're looking at this in a much greater way in the work that we're doing. Can you just break it down? Define what love means.
I think the easiest way for listeners, especially if we're talking here, you said sales professionals and business executives, the easiest way to frame love in the way that I express it in my literature and in the way that I introduce guests on my podcast and such is it's easy to understand if you give it an opposite. And the opposite that I give is fear. And this is not the first time you hear this, but let's look at this in the way that we operate our business or we approach any kind of sales scenario. If fear is present, it actually holds us back. Do we hesitate before picking up the phone? Are we dragging our feet before getting into our quotas for the day? Maybe we have a number we want to hit on numbers of interactions, yet, let me go grab that coffee first. And I got to wait. Nobody's going to be in the office by that time. So I'm just going to wait a couple minutes. And we start stacking all these types of excuses that cause delays. And that usually stems from fear. Fear of having a conversation that's going to be awful. Fear that the conversation is not going to close and it's not going to bring the quota that you need. Fear that maybe you're lacking training, and just a general fear of rejection usually is at the foundation for most of us. And when you come into a place of sales, it becomes a lot more vulnerable and a lot more exposed that fear needs to be solved. And so I'll use fear as the mirror to reflect back. What does love mean? Because if you're not operating from fear, that's when you're operating from love. You're coming from a place of leadership. You're coming from a place of caring. You're coming from a place of understanding, which is a definition I give in my book, which is selling is nothing more than an energy exchange between conscious beings. And when you know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, then love is the emotion that actually is felt by both the buyer and the seller. And so if you don't know what you offer is so much more than what you ask in return, it's going to be harder to get clear on the love that you want to bring to the transaction. And what it looks like when you're showing up with love, you don't hesitate. You're excited. And so you just need to rinse and repeat, get those calls done, because every interaction now is a beautiful opportunity to extend that love to solve their problems and make an impact.
I love that you started with the opposite there of fear, because we all have it. And it is fear of rejection for sure, fear of looking stupid, fear of being judged. And I think if we unpeel the layers of the onion back a little bit there, I think it really is everyone's fear that they don't matter or they're not worthy. And it gets sort of projected into whatever work we're doing. So if you're listening and you're not in sales, I would sort of argue that with that because we're all in sales at some point. If you have a child you're trying to convince to eat their broccoli, you are in sales. It follows us everywhere. But I do think you're right. Fear often drives how we choose to show up. And when I lean into fear, I am so out of alignment with me. I'd love to hear your journey to this. Was there a time where you were a little bit more in fear and you're like, this is not working for me. This is not enjoyable. I've got to lean into something else. What sort of inspired selling with love for you?
Well, before I tell you the origin story, I'm just going to tell you something I was dealing with this week. And I'm going to share this just to give permission to everybody to understand that even as you understand concepts like selling with love, it's not something you graduate from and then you're good to go. It's something you become aware of, and you'll sometimes have slips, and you just want to be able to catch yourself and then get back on your feet as quick as possible. So my current issue this week is I've been struggling writing emails to my list. Like I haven't sent the regular cadence of emails I was supposed to. I've been sitting at it blank, and I was like hesitating, and I realized, and I'm like, God, it's because I'm not clear where I'm coming from. I'm just doing it because I was told that I needed to send this many emails today. And then I'm trying to come up. I didn't have my mailing calendar set up. I wasn't organized. I didn't have that clarity of impact. I didn't know that, by sending this email, this is the difference I'm making in other people's lives. And the moment I forget that, I start procrastinating. I start prioritizing other things when I know sending that email is the highest revenue activity I can do in my business. And so I slip sometimes, and you just need to go back to the foundations and realize, okay, why am I doing this? And then it's more important to me to actually take a step back to get back into clarity of coming from a place of love than to just slog out an email that's going to be half-assed, written terribly, and don't even have a clear goal for it. And so I'm always reminded to take a step back, fix that core issue, which is really saying what emotion, finding the clarity, and getting clear again about what's the difference I want to make in people's lives. Now, going back to your original question, how did that journey look like? From a young age, I got lucky. And one of the first sales jobs, and it's not really a job, but it's something I had to do in high school, is I had to go out and sell chocolate, door-to-door charity fundraising for my school program. And I ended up going to the first door, and I was from a small village, so possibly this experience could not be replicated in a busy town. So I'm going to a friendly neighbor's house, and I'm just like, hey, do you guys want to buy a box of chocolate? They're branded as the world's finest, probably a marketing ploy, but still pretty good chocolate-covered almonds. And they're $2, and you can have a bar, support a good cause. They'd be like, oh, sure, let me grab a bar. And I'm like, oh, that was nice. They're happy. They have chocolate. I'm happy. I just raised some money. And all right, let's go to the next neighbor. And I did this for a few doors. And the more interesting one that happened is I think it's like the 6th or 7th neighbor I go knock to didn't know who they were. And when I made my incredible sales pitch, was basically just said, hey, do you want to buy some chocolate? The lady just says, well, let me ask if my daughter wants any. And she calls down her daughter, who happens to be my age, gorgeous. And I didn't know her because she was English, going to English school. I was French. So I was like, who's that? So chit chat, get her number. And then she ended up being my first girlfriend. And so it's not by coincidence that I write a book called Selling with Love, when my first sales interactions was quite loving in nature. But I think the opposite story is actually how most of us have that negative story around sales. Whether it's from us being a salesperson ourselves and just being rejected, or having to go door to door, like vacuum clean, sales type thing, or Cutco, and just people getting mad, rejecting you. And you're just like, wow, this sales thing is not fun. Or even worse is you're going through a purchase experience and you see a negative sales experience that's really bad. Like they really take advantage of you, and you're realizing, wow, are sales basically manipulative people? I don't want to be one of those. So whenever I get into sales mode, I'm feeling all this resistance in my body because I don't want to be like them. And I think that ends up being at the core of a lot of our resistance in sales, is just associating sales with so much negativity that the moment we have to do it, we have our foot on the brake. And I laugh because most people are giving it different names. Yeah, I don't sell. I just serve people. I understand their needs and then I present them an offer. I'm like, you're describing a sales process. What's wrong with you? So it's like we've put it in a corner. Nobody wants to touch it. And what I'm trying to do is just bring it back to life and say, no, you are selling and you're selling beautifully. And we need more examples of that. So let's do it.
It is important work that you are doing in the world. And I've gotten to train sales teams, but also to go in and work with like their inside team. So like their operations team or their service team. And they're all in sales too, whether it is influencing internally or it's problem solving for the customer. Like at the end, we're really still trying to inspire action for a solution. And I'll ask the question when I come in, because you got to call out the elephant in the room, right? Hey, give me a list of adjectives when you think of a salesperson. And it's always exactly what you think: slimy, sleazy, manipulative. Now, the salespeople, you ask them and they would say helpful. I mean, they tend to have nicer adjectives, right? Because they've learned that what they do is meant to be helpful. But you ask anybody who's non-selling and you're right, they're terrified of it. And yet you get into industries like, I'm an attorney, you have to sell. I'm an accountant, you have to sell. I'm an architect or an engineer. Hey, you're going to be selling. And you're right. People do want to avoid it. Don't you love the creative labels, Jason? Like, I'm not in sales. I'm in business development.
I was going to call the exact same one because it always comes up. And then they'll start, I'm not in sales, I'm an SDR. Or they'll start using acronyms that are, I mean, it's still sales development representative. It's like, I don't want to say I'm a salesperson. So I'll use acronyms. It makes me laugh a bit. And it kind of sweeps the problem under the rug. Because at the end of the day, is like you will get to a point where a part of your job is going to require sales, whatever position you're in. Even if you're an accountant internally within a company and you're presenting results and you need to make sure that they make a decision that is based on the data you found, you will need to sell that idea to the people that are there, speak their language, understand them, communicate clearly, present them an option that is going to serve them, and make sure they understand that you're trying to provide more value than what you ask in return. That is a sales process. And I think by not integrating it, we kind of put it in a shadow box. And then there's a ton of people that are feeling repressed, underappreciated, and blaming everyone else. Just saying like, well, yeah, why is that person getting a promotion? Nobody even appreciates my work or understands what I do. And it's like, well, help people. That's what salespeople do. Help people understand you and explain it in a language that they understand. All of that are principles of sales. And I think once we start embracing it, then we can actually start learning concepts that is going to be so helpful in our career, whether we're in sales or not. It'll just open every door for you. The world we live in is built based on transactions that have happened. That's why in my definition, I call it energy exchanges, like the house you live in. Someone had to buy the land. Someone had to build the house, sell it to someone, raise money from investors. The whole town got developed with someone with a vision. A mayor set up an office. Like everything that's in our like human world is the end process of a successful sales transaction. How could we put it in a box and not even look at it? Because now we're missing a huge part of what it means to be human.
That's such a good way of framing it. If you look at anything and everything in your life, it required an exchange of energy. I think what it whittles down to, so anybody listening to this, if you felt that negative and almost shameful if somebody were to put you in a box of sales, it does not diminish your credibility or your integrity unless you choose to show up out of alignment with love and curiosity and honoring the other person, because sales should never be something that you're doing to someone. It should be this collaboration of understanding we either need each other or we don't, and we could still have great love either way, right? So, okay, let's kind of break this down. Let's say I am a potential customer for you. What is your process for getting yourself into that space to show up aligned, connected, etc.? Can you walk us through what that looks like?
So what I could do here is, even before I get into conversation with what could be a potential client, such as yourself, is having an awareness of everything that's happening. It's funny, I have a 5 steps of selling with love that I speak about in my book, and we'll lay them out here and we'll kind of walk through it. And I'll list them now, which is you got to first love the impact, then love the client, then love the product, then love the process, then love the self. All right. And technically, the love the self is the first one, but nobody wants to talk about self-love because it sounds so mushy or woo. So we'll keep it last so we can deal with it later. It's too sensitive. But there is an order. And the first thing I'd get clear on is loving the impact of what you do. Okay? So let's say in this case, I'm doing sales trainings, right? So if I'm speaking to Amy and Amy is a potential client for me, she's a podcast host, she has her own business, and I want to help her get more results. What would happen if I can change her beliefs around sales and allow her to enable herself to be able to make more impact and do it with integrity? Well, she gets more revenue, more profits, and then she gets to actually grow her team. She gets to hire more people. That actually has a ripple effect. She's helping the economy by being more productive, making more impact in the process. She has more peace of mind, more freedom. She feels good about the business she's doing. She's not doing any kind of shady techniques that actually screw some of her clients. Instead, she's doing it with integrity. So a good business is already showing that by being good, you can grow, you can scale, and people respect that. They acknowledge your branding. So everything is looking to work really, really well. And I get to make her an example of how selling with love is a powerful way for people to choose to sell, which is showing that they're the ones being more successful as opposed to the douchey, manipulative, scammy marketers and salespeople that do exist in the marketplace. But one of my biggest personal motivators is because I don't want to see this in the marketplace. Instead, I want to be able to see a world where we can trust each other a little more because everyone has learned the right ways of communicating, selling in a way with integrity. And that's a world I want to see for tomorrow. And as I do this for her, I know I can make tons of money. I can live a beautiful lifestyle. Here I am in Bali doing my sales training by continuously selling my services to people like Amy. Now, the reason I went on that rant is because I have some clarity on my impact, but there were 3 different types of impact I spoke about there. The impact of the sale directly to Amy, more profits, more revenue, more freedom, able to grow her business, not go bankrupt. Those are all the impacts that I know are direct to the buyer. And I want to be clear on that because I need to understand, okay, if I'm getting up in the morning or I'm staying up late at night and I'm going to go and sell to someone like Amy, why does it matter that I sell this product to Amy? I want to be clear on that impact. Another word, if you want to use Simon Sinek's powerful word, then it's the why. It's to start with why. And if you get clear on the why for the client, now you understand why it's important for you to sell because you get to make that difference in someone's life. You get to solve a problem. But I went a step further and I spoke about the impact as a ripple in the world. And the biggest thing for me is I'm tired of seeing a world where everyone is suspecting everyone. We all think that, everyone's trying to screw each other. And what if we just teach every business how to do sales in an ethical way, in a powerful way, from a place of love, so we can actually start trusting each other more and having a community where we do good to each other? That's the kind of world I want to see shift. I also want to see a world with less manipulative salespeople, marketers. And again, these are all the impacts and the ripple effects of me training the right people with my methodology, and they get to be successful in business. So I go and get clear on the impact for the world. If I would do this business and serve hundreds, thousands, millions of people, what is the ripple in the world that would happen? And what's cool is if you do this, you start getting a lot of juicy material for your vision statement, mission statement, purpose. Because a lot of people will be like, why are you even doing this? What's your business? Like if someone comes to me and is like, Jason, why are you being so salesy? I'm like, I'll tell you why, because I need the good guys to win. This is the ripple effect I want to make. People go, I understand. And the last one I spoke about was my own personal benefits and the impact for me. I want to make money. I want to live a great life. I want to take care of my community. And I want to make money doing something I love and be a role model that you can be abundant doing something good. Those are my selfish reasons, my selfish impact. And it's okay to be selfish. You put it all on the table. That is the first love. And that's what gets so powerful when you get clear on this, is now not only will you be able to communicate more effectively to who you sell to on the reasons why you're selling, but you're even giving yourself a reason to get up in the morning and not actually have any issues with doing what is necessary to make that impact because you're clear on what it is.
I am such a big believer in just the coaching that I've done with people. I do think that we are all stupidly simple, really. We're complicated in our stories, but we're stupidly simple in a lot of ways. And if we can start with filling ourselves with love and acceptance, and it does sound very woo and touchy-feely, but I'm telling you, if you can do that, you don't need as much from other people because you've given yourself what you thought you needed to seek from others. And so if I spend 10, 20 minutes in the morning, high achievers have a really hard time slowing down and pouring into themselves because they feel like, I got to go, I got to get stuff done. But if I do that in the morning, then when I go into that next meeting, I could just say like, you know what, Jason, I've given myself all I needed today. I just get to be present with you. My highest, best self gets to take hold instead of my ego. And our egos are needy. They are judgy, they are fearful, and they make a mess in almost all situations. And so talk to me about, what do you coach with ego?
It's actually not the word ego you use that really perked my ears. It's the needy. I was having a debate with somebody, I think his name is Walter McKay, another podcaster. And the question was like, can you be selling with love and be needy at the same time? And then I was like, wow, what a beautiful question. And we had to sit on it. And if you're listening to this and you ask yourself that question too, can you be needy and sell with love at the same time? And after we took some time thinking about it and we deliberated, the answer was no. No, you can't. See, selling with love is actually a luxury. It's a luxury you get to have because you're only aware of its power if you've gotten out of your own head and taken away the neediness. And if all you're seeing is the neediness, then what you're trying to do is, you're coming from a place of ego, as you've mentioned. You're going to be reactive. You're not going to be proactive. And you're not going to do the things right because you're so impatient in the process. So you might be able to squeeze a sale into short term, but you're just going to destroy yourself in the process. So the short answer is no, you got to be non-needy to be able to come from a place of love. And it brings all the dividends in the long term.
The cycle we see with people is it's awfully easy to not feel needy when we are fat and happy. And I don't mean that literally. I mean, our pipelines are bursting. We have money falling in. We can be a bit more discerning. Personally, like the take of be lovingly skeptical because it allows us to really slow down and ask questions and understand if the need is a mutual fit and take our happy ears off. So we're not just hearing what we think we want to hear to close the deal. It's easy to do that when the pipeline is full. When things really slow down is when we're challenged to live it still. And what advice do you give to people when they're in that place? Like, hey, Jason, the marketplace is shifting. My industry is slowing down. Times are scary when there's some of that scarcity mentality kicking in. What advice do you give to people?
I'd keep walking through the 5 loves because the one thing you got to remind yourself is that impact. And when you have that clear, the ones that are successful keep being successful regardless of the market. Is the one that were just standing on top of the wave because there was a market that was carrying everyone, they'll end up crashing when the waves go down. So you got to be one of those top performers. Whenever there are changes in the market, there are changes of times. The habit that I always reinforce for people to do is actually related to the second love, and that is love the client. And so I would tell you to spend time to get back into conversation with past clients, see how their needs evolve, see how their needs have changed, get into conversations with people and adjust who you're going to be targeting if there is a big shift in demand and you need to go into a new market. Or if your current market, you haven't been serving them to the needs that they have today, you need to have conversations with happy customers you've had in the past or people you're expecting to maybe do business in the future. I would say high touch point, high conversation as much as possible so you can truly get yourself ready for the shift that has happened and speak the language that is necessary for you to understand them. When someone's not feeling loved, you usually get to an argument and the conversation usually goes to a point where it's like, oh, you just don't understand me, right? We're talking relationships. Well, the same goes in sales. So if you're seeing that there's changes in the markets, things are looking pessimist, go back into having conversations with people and saying like, hey, you're probably seeing that there's changes in the market too. I'd love to know what's been happening in your world. What decisions is the company making? Get back into trying to understand the client. Because the more you spend time doing that, then regardless of what the market's looking like, you're going to be ready with the right solution because you took the time to understand them.
I really do appreciate your take on the 5 loves here because early on, what you mentioned with you dragging your feet a little bit of getting some of your own stuff out and sending the emails is when that fear kicks in, it's because of lack of clarity, as you mentioned, and we often will have creative avoidance, and creative avoidance can breed creative excuses. And we have a way of believing everything that we think and feel if we are not at a more conscious or aware level. And so if you within your work environment, if everybody is like the market, we have a way of believing that that's going to drive our success. And I love your examples of, are you focusing on your impact? Are you focusing on the client? Lean back into those things to provide the clarity to get rid of the creative excuses. Okay, I'm curious about you. Conscious habit. The reason I started this podcast was I'm obsessed with the idea of consciousness. Just being a mindful, loving human on the planet and at work. What are some of the habits of consciousness you personally have, the ones that keep you feeling good, centered, aligned, all of that?
That's a loaded question that I could spend an entire episode with because I'm someone that's went through so many personal growth programs. So for those who won't know, I worked at a company that was very much into personal growth education prior to being a sales trainer. This company was named Mind Valley. And this is basically courses in all sorts of categories of life to live as an extraordinary human. So in that, I had many goal setting, vision boarding programs that I've went through. So I have this thing called a life book where I've set goals, beliefs, visions, and purpose statements around 12 categories of my life. And these are all the things to make me extremely conscious of what is the priority. I set every month a category of choice that I focus on, whether it's a personal or an external one, such as this is a month for my character, or this is a month for my career, or my finances, or my romantic relationships, or my family life. So I'm extremely conscious. I meet with two other men every single week where we review our weekly goals, our quarterly priorities, and our monthly priorities for our personal lives, which tie into our business goals. But that is one of the most powerful habits that I have, is gaining clarity on how I want to design my life to be beautiful, having an accountability group with other men. And whether you're listening to this as a man or a woman, for me, I knew that finding peers of other men that were in my industry was the most powerful thing I could do. So just being with other people you love, trust, and feel open and honest with, to me, was a way to just push each other and call each other out and have conversations when things are rough. And for the more little fun ones, like I'll talk about a fun habit or conscious habit I've recently picked up with my partner. So she and I have one little vice. I know it's a terrible vice. I don't know how we get to walk around freely doing this criminal activity. We drink coffee. But now we have this new little habit, which is we're not allowed to drink coffee unless we do the 5-minute meditation before. So we get grounded and present. And that's our ticket to purchase to get the coffee, is we'll meditate first. So of course, that's always great for mindfulness. And then the rest is like, if I speak health and fitness, to me, I like setting big goals in the future that you need to prepare for. So for example, I love Spartan races. And those are like obstacle course racing. And there's a championship happening in a month from today. And we've been training since the end of May. So when I set a race and I book a ticket for that, then I need to train for that race. So it takes care of all my eating habits, all of my fitness habits, because I know I have an important tournament that I need to be in good health for. And that takes care of running every day, doing my workouts, and keeping myself healthy too.
You know that phrase, how you do anything is how you do everything. I love the intentionality that you bring to all of these various areas of life. And that's something I'm going to challenge myself to reflect on that. And I'll challenge our listeners to do the same. If we're living life by accident, we're a part of somebody else's plan. And the thing that you're doing is you're constantly looking and evaluating and adjusting, instead of what many of us do, which is, I created my vision board on January 1st, 2022, and there's not a whole lot of revisiting, reevaluating, accountability. Are there some additional habits that you would say that you see successful salespeople or leaders take on versus those who maybe are not experiencing the same success?
The best thing I could say around this topic is actually your horizon of forecasting, we could say. Is I think the more successful you are, you're setting goals and prioritizing things with a longer horizon timeline. So when I see someone successful, they're like, yep, I know where I want to be in about 3 years. And so as such, then I know what activities need to be done in the next year. And then I can break it down by quarter, break it down by month. Like any business that wants good success has priorities, has a plan, and then usually has a long-term plan. And it's almost like a correlation. You could even look at this when it comes to just general income. Like the lowest paid people usually will state their income in an hourly rate. And then other people will speak about daily rates. Others will talk about their monthly income. Others will look at annual salaries. And then if you're in the top tier, you're talking about your net worth. And so your horizon of what you measure, I think actually really changes the habits that you build every day based on how far you forecast. So if somebody's like, all I'm thinking about is making a sale, I just want to get a sale. Like you'll do a certain set of activities as opposed to someone saying, okay, I need to make 20 sales this month. Will have a lot better results as they understand what will be necessary for them to hit that goal. Or even better is someone saying, yeah, I need to make sure that I generate commissions of 300,000 by the end of the year. What will that take? And they reverse plan. So I think the further of the horizon of planning usually allows you to dream bigger, set bolder goals, and then reverse engineer activities that will lead you to those goals.
I'm totally with you on this. And we call that the playbook, right? Because we're often trying to manage lagging indicators. It's like if I said I want to lose 10 pounds and I'm only looking at the scale, I'm not managing how much activity did I have? What did I put in my mouth today? And so if you're only looking at the numbers, that's a lagging indicator. You cannot affect it today, but you can affect the activity you do that contributes to that. So what I have often found is people do lack the discipline of consistency. And they kind of get into these funks where they're chasing their tail and they're not being consistent in their output because they don't feel like it wins. So what is the advice or the coaching you give to somebody who isn't doing the things that they know are going to contribute to that success that they say they want so badly?
That's where we got to bring the woo, Amy. I had a conversation with one of my good mates, Carl Harvey, and he's a man who speaks about creative visualization. He speaks about abundance mindset. And when we had a discussion, it was actually a debate. It was, is mindset overrated in sales? Like everyone's like, you just have to have the right mindset and everything will be solved. And it's like, really? No. I need the tactics. I need the protocol. Give me the scripts. Come on. And so when we started the conversation, his opening statement was like, sir, it's not overrated. It is underrated. Understanding the power of the subconscious mind, listening to these things that speak about manifesting, where the mind focuses on, expands, all of these things are so true. And so a lot of times if you're in these funks, again, I talk about my 5 loves in selling, how to gain that clarity is what you can point at. If ever you're feeling a little lost and confused, it's like, why am I even doing this? I can give you the tactic. I can give you this map you can go back to. But then what you probably want to prime yourself with is just reminders, whatever the books are about the power of the subconscious mind that speaks about how you need to reprogram, gain control of that to remind you that, hey, if you're in a funk, we need to shift that. And it is important. The mindset makes a difference. If you're working with me and you have these maps in front of you, that's when I was like, go back to your map. What are you not clear on? Get back to it. You got to be shocked into being reminded of what works, because if you're in a funk, yeah, it sucks. And you need to kind of just shake the body up and do something that'll remind you why you're doing this in the first place. And then get back to the core activities. And the moment something shifts in your results, then start stacking the activities, because you will build a momentum in an upward spiral as opposed to a downward spiral.
What are some of your go-to inspirations? What are the things that you're turning on, listening to, or leaning into?
Right now, I'm listening to a Brian Tracy book for sales. I had The Power of the Subconscious Mind by Joseph. I forget his last name. Just great thing. And I'll go running. And usually like the long run, like not a fast run, a long run with an audiobook is really what's going to do it for me. Obviously, any podcast that hype you up, such as listening to Conscious Habit, is a great one. If you come and listen to mine as well, I'm hoping you're going to enjoy it. And if I'm really in a slump, and to be honest, I haven't been in slumps for too long, but if I am in a slump, I have that friend. Like we all have that friend, the one that's like the cheerleader. I think we all need a cheerleader in our life. And so I know that there's this one friend that I call that if I'm in a slump, I can have a chat with them and they will be there to just slap me and be like, get back on your feet, brother. You know how to do this. Or if not, you can always borrow that kick in the butt by going on YouTube, finding a David Goggins video and just getting your butt kicked that way. Doing it alone is going to be the worst thing, because you end up lost in your own thought. You need to kind of let it out. And if you have someone you can actually have that conversation with, might be the best thing to kick your butt.
Yeah, I can't remember who said it, but I remember hearing the phrase, the mind is a dangerous neighborhood, never go there alone. You can get caught up in the mind. And yet understanding and learning how to become more conscious and managing your mind instead of your mind managing you is one of the things that I know will contribute to people's success. And not just success in your role, but really finding this place of joy and fulfillment as a human on the planet. It doesn't come always in the goals that we hit. That's temporary, but it can be more lasting when we learn how to manage and create that foundation for ourselves. I know that for me personally, what I've been able to measure my own consciousness on, and it's always there. Jason, like you said, it's not something you master. Like you never just become all the time good at it. We aren't like monks living in a monastery whose only job is to be like loving beings on the planet. We're humans in a thriving society. We will have ups and downs, but I measure my own consciousness on it. How long does it last? Because what used to be, I could have a shitty year and just be victim to the life I was building and not even realize it. Then turned into, well, maybe it's just a couple months, or maybe it's just a week, maybe it's a day. And now I could not tell you the last time I had a bad day. And it doesn't mean inconveniences don't happen or things don't fall through, but it's how quickly we overcome it that I feel like really makes the difference in being able to lean back into love. When's the last time you had just a really shitty day?
I can't put my finger on it, to be quite honest. And what I would say, Amy, is your unit of measurement is the right one, because I think once you started taking control of your life and building the right habits around the ways you want to show up every day, it really starts lowering the amount of days that it'll put you in this slump. Like if I can, I'm trying to think of something. Like I remember when I was at my tail end of my career within Mind Valley, I felt very disaligned with my role. I was trying to break out to myself. I had some anxiety thinking like, oh, can I go out on my own? Can I leave this job? Can I make the success myself? But I don't know if I'd consider that necessarily a thump. It was just like an extended time for contemplation, figuring things out. And I had an appreciation for that, call it a lower vibration, maybe just slower vibration, not necessarily negative, but it was like some things take time. Sometimes whenever you're doing changes, whenever you're going through a transition, maybe that slump you're going through is actually an indication of something you need to look into what you're doing, why you're doing it, and you're getting a signal to make you make the change that is necessary. And this, again, I have to default to my framework because obviously I'm proud of it. But oftentimes, when I'm disaligned and I look back at my impact, am I still clear on it? Does that still matter to me? Like if I wake up one day and I'm like, oh my God, do I even want to actually do this kind of impact? Is this who I am? Do I need to go back to the drawing board? Do I feel like I have a different purpose? And I keep questioning this and I keep refining it. But I will tell you one thing that happened to me recently, which actually made me change who I sell to. Because I had a lot of coaches that were just starting out and I'm selling to them on an ongoing basis. I was like, is this all I'm focused on? And when I went back to my impact map, I realized one of the big things I want to do is actually really help us be more conscious in every way we operate in life through the lens of sales. And I really love spirituality as well. And then I started thinking, is what I'm doing the highest leverage I can make to hit those goals and to really push that impact? And then I started thinking, no, I actually want to work with spiritual leaders that want to grow their marketing and sales. And so I realized why I was not so excited about reaching out to the people I was reaching out to, because they might not have been the people I thought I could make the most impact with. So again, even when it's a slump, there's so much rich information you can unearth. And I start with the impact. Is this still what I'm doing? I look at the client. Is this really who I want to serve? Why? Are they capable of paying me? Are they fun to work with? And can I actually solve a problem in their life? Then I start designing a product that I also love based on my understanding of who I'm serving and what I want to do. Then I can start building the perfect product. Once I have that stack, then everything around selling becomes fun and easy. So if there's a kink in this mood and you're in a slump, you got to go back and being like, what's going on? And if all of that still feels that it's online, then you got to look at that last one, which I did tell you was the most important. And that's the self-love. And that's where you need to keep going into personal growth. And it's like, there's this thing about saying ignorance is bliss. And that's not true, because if it truly was bliss, you wouldn't have went on a journey of self-discovery. But while you start going down this rabbit hole, I think there's ups, there's downs, there's like blind sides, all of that beautiful stuff. But on the other end, I think that's just growth, beauty, life, living. And so ups, downs, appreciate it all, because you're going to end up on the other side in a beautiful place.
It is true. And man, is that a tough journey to get to learn how to appreciate all of it, not just the good stuff, not just I think many of us know and even lean into the power of gratitude, but it's not always easy to be gracious and feel glad for the tough things that we went through. But really, it is what molds us. I think this has been such a helpful conversation. I love your 5 loves, and anybody listening, whether you are directly in sales or not, it's certainly something you can apply to how you show up in life. If you're a leader, are you leaning into the impact of your organization and then the people that you're serving as a leader? And I think to be able to wrap your arms, your mind, your heart around those really will make you more impactful. And I'm a big believer. Look, at every room we walk into, every Zoom meeting we join, we can either uplift it or we can suck the air out of it. So we got to use that power wisely. I encourage everybody to grab the book, Selling with Love. It's a great book to reference, read, and gift to somebody. Check out Jason's podcast. It's so good. Selling with Love is a really great podcast. So many good guests. There's just so much good that you've done with that podcast, both in its new iteration and formally. So I encourage everybody to check it out. Jason, can you just let everybody know, how do they find you? How do they connect with you, learn more, etc.?
The easiest way to find everything here is sellingwithlove.com. Like, you go to sellingwithlove.com, you'll find the podcast, you'll find the book, you'll find me. And so if you go there, you can go and browse what's going on, see the latest episodes, and definitely grab any of the gifts I'm offering. There's some opt-ins up in there. So grab what is necessary, join the community. We'd love to stay in touch. And it's been an absolute pleasure to share with you, Amy.
Before we wrap up today's episode, here are my 3 takeaways from Jason and how we can incorporate them into our lives, our work, and the world at large. Number 1, intentionality and accountability. I don't know about you all, but when I have a lack of clarity, I tend to lean more into creative avoidance. And when I notice myself avoiding things that I've told myself are really important, I realize that I'm lacking those things that Jason was so wise in sharing, that we have to be both intentional and accountable for what we're doing each day. Number 2, we don't have to do it alone. It's so important for us to find what inspires us. And as Jason kind of said, what kicks us in the butt, right? What are those things that continue to motivate you? How can you be hardwired to focus on impact and the people, and then maybe the product or service last, if you're specifically in sales? If you're a leader, right, how can we continuously be really focused on that impact and the people around us? We don't get anywhere by ourselves. And number 3, listen, Jason literally wrote the book on selling with love. And I think it was great that he said, hey, even I have to stop and remind myself. This journey that we're on to being more conscious, more mindful in each and every interaction is something we never have 100% right. We just have to be committed to learning and committed to the journey and committed to doing it over and over and over again. Practice makes permanent. Thanks for listening to The Conscious Habit, a show from the People Forward Network. If you have questions for me or our guest, or you're curious about more conscious-oriented content, head on over to the Conscious Habit Facebook group and let's keep this conversation going. Until next time, do the world a favor and go love yourself.